In honor of the new year being a time where people start new habits or try to restart habits that they've already begun on, I thought this could be a good video to make before the end of January because I think some people make sustainable living part of those habits and goals that they want to develop. If that's you, let me know. Let me know at what stage you're at or if you've made any of these mistakes. Let me know in the comments as I go through this video if you made any of these mistakes on your sustainable journey, or caveat, if watching my videos helped you avoid these mistakes, because through my content, I try to help you avoid these mistakes in general. But let's get into some mistakes that you should avoid if you are embarking on a eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle. Before we get into it though, I want to give a huge thank you to Squarespace for partnering with me on this video. We'll talk about more about them at the end, but if you're interested in getting a website, online store, or even if you just need a domain, Squarespace is the place to do it, and there's a link at the top of the description to give you a little discount. Continuing your consumer habits, but just replacing the things you were buying with sustainable things. This would be like if hyper-consumer Shelbi thought that she could switch from hyper-consuming fast fashion to hyper-consuming sustainable fashion and then realizing, whoa,
sustainable living is way too expensive and not for me, I can't do this.
When really the idea is not to go from buying things that are not sustainable to buying things that are sustainable. To me, the goal of living sustainably is to buy less in general. It's kind of my whole philosophy here on this channel. If you're not already subscribed and you don't already know the spiel I'm about to get, make sure you hit the subscribe button. But basically the way I label my lifestyle is eco-minimalism, purchasing a lot less so that I have a smaller impact on the planet. Or I should say, caveat, buying a lot less new. Secondhand items don't have the same impact on the planet as purchasing new things all the time does. But one of the mistakes I see people make when they embark on a sustainable living journey, and I think one of the reasons that sustainable living gets a bad rep for being expensive, is because people think that they can continue the same habits, but just replace them with things that are labeled eco-friendly. And don't get me wrong, sustainable items are typically more expensive than conventionally made things because they're not taking the same shortcuts that unsustainable things do. They're not exploiting people and the planet, which comes at a cheaper cost than doing things the right way. However, I think if you're coming to this lifestyle and just thinking about switching what you're buying and not how or how much you're buying, it's definitely not the best approach, and I would personally say one of the biggest mistakes that you can make when embarking on trying to live a more eco-friendly lifestyle. Looking at sustainable living from one angle, or sustainability overall, or things like climate change overall with one perspective and not taking an intersectional approach to it, is definitely a mistake I've seen a lot throughout the years. Not only is environmentalism really intersectional because of the impacts it has on low-income people, different people of socioeconomic status, as well as people of color, is very much a mistake in pointing fingers at certain people and blaming them for the problems that really have nothing to do with them and really stem from systemic issues at the top. I think especially in its infancy, the zero-waste movement specifically focused way too much on a very narrow scope of what environmentalism was, and somehow became the face of what being an environmentalist means, when in reality, I think that was a complete detriment to the way that we police each other these days. And embarking on an eco-friendly lifestyle with that tunnel vision can lead down the road to very dangerous ideologies and not making progress. So make sure that as you embark on a sustainable journey, you're looking at all different perspectives and not only hyper-focusing on one thing. Getting trapped in the aesthetics. This is for sure one of the mistakes I see made most often, and I think a lot of times it's because of the people who are talking about these things and the brands who are spending money to get in front of you when your search starts to change to eco-friendly things. They promote a certain aesthetic, they do. I've seen criticism online recently that all sustainability content creators' homes look the same. We seem to be terrified of color and pattern, and I can't lie, I kind of am. I wouldn't say it's necessarily only for creative purposes, like only so that when you're looking at my content, I look like an earth goddess of sorts. Personally, for me, I have anxiety disorder, and so the less patterns and colors in my day truly help me. And I think that maybe a lot of us who are a combination of environmentalists or sustainably focused people, as well as content creators, we probably likely have a lot of the similar thought patterns that lead us to having similar looking homes. But I don't think there's anything wrong with, if you want to get into sustainability, that it looks completely different than what it looks like for me. And it should in reality. You don't have to change your entire personality and start to love browns and greens just because you want to live more sustainably. If you love checker print, pink and purple, then by all means, buy all of that you want. But still using the same ground rules as purchasing secondhand, being conscious of the purchases that you're making. Do you need them? Do you want them? Are they produced responsibly, ethically, all of those sort of things. And the other part of this caveat of the mistake of getting caught in aesthetics is going and replacing all of your things to fit said aesthetic. I personally, all my swing top jars are secondhand. All of my other glass jars are reused. That's mostly because of my personal philosophy of eco-minimalism being the most sustainable way to get things, being secondhand and reused. That's just always been a thing that I practice and preached. But I understand that depending on where you find this movement and how you come into it, that might not be what you were presented. Getting too caught up in the aesthetics of things and buying new things all the time to fit said aesthetic is definitely a mistake. I hope you didn't get caught up in, but I'd love to hear if you did. Equally though, I will say, as zero waste has really transformed from what it was when I first came to it to where it is now, there's also a lot of policing about people who do buy swaps that they actively use and shaming people for doing so. It's like the really opposite end of the pendulum swing where people will criticize me for using a reusable straw. I think equally, if you're being conscious about it and purchasing things that you will get use out of, I think it's okay to buy some things for your sustainable journey. Just definitely be conscious of what you actually need, what you'll actually use, and always prioritize secondhand first. Associated with this one is people thinking that decluttering is a very sustainable option. So I see many people thinking that if they just donate all of their old things that don't fit with the minimalistic, eco-conscious aesthetic, that's okay because they donated it. When in reality, only about 1 to 2 of every 10 things that you donate to a thrift store actually gets resold, and the rest of it ends up in a landfill, So I definitely think decluttering and donating as a sustainable part of this lifestyle is definitely a mistake. This other mistake is a lot more small, not so grandiose an idea, but it is buying a new reusable bag every time you forget your bags at the store. Please tell me I'm not alone in being someone who did this. When I was in college, I did this all the time. The amount of HEB reusable bags that I have distributed amongst my friends and family over the years is astronomical. If I could talk to younger Shelbi, I would have told her, put it in the cart, Shelbi, put it in your car, and take it to your house. Because buying reusable things when you don't need them or won't use them, like I said, has an environmental footprint. Just because it's reusable doesn't mean it's minuscule to the environment and the extraction and production of making said thing. This one is a big one that I see a lot of people make, thinking that what works for one person that you're watching on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok is what's going to work for you. Things like giving up after you've tried one single shampoo bar, or saying that person composts this way and I can't do that, so I personally just can't compost. Trying to DIY everything because that's what someone you see on the internet is doing, or thinking that bulk bins are the only way to a zero waste lifestyle or an eco-conscious lifestyle. These are questions I see in my comment sections all the time and in my DMs. What do I do if I don't have bulk bins? What do I do if I didn't like this shampoo? What do I do if I don't have a yard so that I can compost? All these sort of things. And I think the problem is this sort of what is represented on social media as being the only option, when in reality there are so many other options out there. But getting too caught up in what your favorite sustainability creator uses and then thinking that is the end all be all, and if it doesn't work for you then you just give up and go back to the incredibly wasteful practices that are the alternatives, is definitely a mistake. There are a gajillion different body care products out there that you can try. There are several different ways that you can compost. I'm actually making a video on that soon, so stay tuned. So I definitely think that an overall mistake is thinking that what works for someone is going to work for you and then giving up if it doesn't. And I think that kind of runs into my next one, which is seeking perfection. To me, this looks like not deciding what you will and will not compromise on, right? Thinking that you're just going to change everything about your life and it's going to happen so smoothly. You're just going to change this and change that and it'll be no problem and you won't need to compromise. So for example, I absolutely absolutely adore having soft water in our home. It's one of my favorite things. But we didn't do it because I love the taste of it or the effect it has on my hair. We did it because of the effect it has on our appliances. Hard water can really, really wear on your appliances over time. Basically, the salt that we have to buy comes in a plastic bag, and as much as that sucks, I'm not going to compromise on that because I think soft water, specifically with how hard our water is here in San Antonio, is something that I need. It is not something I'm willing to compromise on. For a long time, the same thing with my deodorant. I was using native deodorant when they did not have it packaged in cardboard, and it was packaged in plastic, but I didn't think that I should have to stink to live a sustainable lifestyle and to talk about sustainability. I couldn't find other deodorants that I liked that would work, that wouldn't break me out, and so for a while I was buying plastic deodorant. And another thing is houseplants. Some people give me shit because obviously they have an environmental footprint, but it's something that brings me immense joy and I'm not willing to compromise on. And I think it's a mistake to go into sustainable living and think that there won't be areas where you need to compromise, that you'll be able to change everything, and it will definitely bring on a sense of discomfort if you're set in your ways and have routines and things that you're used to using. To think that you can then just change all of that and it's not going to be an issue is definitely a mistake. And what kind of ties into that one is expecting it all to happen overnight. Thinking that you'll find out about sustainable living one day and how wasteful all these different industries and practices and products and systems are, and that you'll just be able to change it all the next day. You can't change all of your actions overnight because the system doesn't allow you to. We currently live in a linear economy that doesn't allow for sustainable living to really thrive. Things like returnable packaging, package-free foods, local and seasonal foods that are much better for the planet, curbside composting systems and take-back programs from brands' packaging, those things don't exist. And so all of that weight falling onto your shoulders, changing your lifestyle and thinking you're gonna do it like that is a huge mistake. And I say it's a mistake because if you go into it with that thought process and it doesn't pan out, because it won't, you're not going to stay on this lifestyle for very long. My individual actions are just things that I can do on a daily basis to tell the system what I personally think is or isn't okay. And the overall purpose of that is to influence system change, because at the end of the day, that is what we need. The 3 R's are in the order that they're in for a reason. And I know that recently there have been so many more R's added to this list, but I think they still all kind of fall under the 3 R's, if you're with me. Reduce, reuse, recycle is meant to be in order of importance. So under reduce to me is refuse, and under reduce to me means buying less. That's what I'm always talking about. It's evaluating your needs of basically what you do and don't need, and reducing what you don't. Basically just bringing less into your life so that you can avoid the reuse and recycle part. You should always start with reduce. Then reuse to me is things like purchasing things secondhand. That is reusing something that someone else didn't want. Repurpose is another R that was added, but I feel like reuse is the same thing. So reuse something that you got in one scenario for something else instead of just putting it in the recycling bin. And repairing also kind of falls under reusing in my head. And recycling is pretty much what it sounds like, curbside recycling, and I also think of rotting, which people have added to the R's, but I think it's the same. Recycling is composting, basically recycling natural materials. And I'm saying that it's a mistake to forget that these things are in order for a reason, because I think a lot of people, when they think of zero waste, they just think of buying things that are more recyclable or recycling more or starting to recycle, recycling properly, all that sort of stuff. And while it's definitely a key to overall like systemically changing the wasteful culture that we live in, recycling should not be your first resort. It should be like second to last. And that's kind of what I want to drive home, is that reduce has all these other things under it that we should be doing as a primary action in living a sustainable lifestyle. And forgetting about that and just going straight to recycling is definitely a mistake. I think having a black and white mindset basically means focusing too much on plastic and not paying enough attention on the entire environmental footprint of XYZ thing. Like for instance, my bulk bins at Central Market are back open, my favorite bulk bins, and I can get all sorts of candy from there without any packaging, which in the infancy of the zero waste movement would have been the most sustainable option. But a lot of those candy companies do a lot of shady things in terms of sugar production, where they get their sugar from. Same thing with chocolate, cocoa, where they get that from. The incredibly problematic ways that they treat people in that supply chain, as well as how they just degrade the land and fuck it up for generations to come. Don't get me started. I think it's a mistake to think that all of that is okay as long as I can get it without plastic. That black and white mindset is plastic bad, non-packaging good, and I completely disagree with that premise. I always have, and I've been trying really hard to like incorporate that into what sustainable living actually is, and I hope that if you found sustainable living through me, I've done a good job of telling you like pay attention to more than just the packaging, because there's a lot more that's important, like supporting regenerative agriculture and supporting local communities and farmers who actually will implement sustainable practices on their farms, and all that sort of stuff is really, really more important to long-term sustainability than the packaging of a product. And I think that thinking that one day you're going to reach this pinnacle of sustainability and environmentalism, thinking that one day you are going to have reached that goal, girl, I've been at this sustainable living thing for seriously over a decade. I would say I started in like 2009. But the more I've tried to live a sustainable lifestyle, the longer this goes on, the more I realize there's always more to learn, there's always more to do, and that really if you're trying to do more than just live a sustainable lifestyle, if you're trying to actually change the system, that will never stop. For me, the trajectory looked like get all of your friends and family to care, but they don't, so give up on that and start social media and change everything about your lifestyle. And then that's like, okay, you've got that figured out. Now we need to actually like change the system, and the system change, that's really big. And now you need to focus on community because that's where change actually happens. And but you're an introvert. It's just always ongoing. But I find joy in always chasing after something that I care so deeply about. So I hope you're on this journey with me. Like I said, if you're not already subscribed, please do that and give this video a like if you found it helpful, or share with anyone you know who wants to start sustainable living so we can help them avoid these mistakes. And another huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Like I said, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform, so you can look to them to build an online store, website, or even just if you need to purchase a domain. Squarespace makes setting up a website super easy because you don't need to learn coding. They already have some beautiful templates over there that you can customize to be exactly what you're looking for. Squarespace makes it easy to connect your social media and to also take advantage of their blogging tools. You can do email campaigns through Squarespace because it is an all-in-one platform, like I mentioned. With their 24-hour customer service and traffic insight tools, it makes it the easiest way to build a website on the internet today. So when you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/Shelbizleee for 10% off of your first purchase.